and one glorious nation under God. And together, we will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. And we will make America great again.
Well, hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to our program. Pro-life leader Frank Pavone here, director of Priests for Life. Well, today I'm delighted to welcome a special guest. He has been a friend and ally for many, many years. He is the president of the American Principles Project, about which you're going to learn more today if you don't know it already. And he and I have traveled many similar paths over the years. He was educated at Franciscan University of Steubenville, and he served some really great legislators like Congressman Chris Smith and Senator Sam Brownback, both very, very good friends, both of whom have been on this program as well and are well known within the pro-life, pro-family communities. It's my pleasure here to welcome now Terry Schilling. Terry, great to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Father. I've been a huge fan of yours since I first met you in 2006 at Franciscan, and I'm really excited to be here.
It is great to see you. So American Principles Project, I've been very impressed with the progress and the impact that you've made over there. Tell our audience a little bit about its nature and mission and some of the key activities you're involved in.
Well, and again, thank you so much for having me. But our mission at American Principles Project is very simple. It's to defend and support the American family through elections and public policy. And what that looks like is essentially the same way that the NRA, supports the Second Amendment and our right to protect ourselves in self-defense, same way that the AARP protects Social Security and Medicare. American Principles Project, we protect the innocence of children, and we protect parental rights when it comes to education and a whole host of other areas like healthcare and so much more. We want to empower the American family so that it's easier to have a family, so that people can get married again and start having kids again. This is the most beautiful part of our lives. It helps justify a lot of sacrifice and suffering. And so we're just all about making Democrats pay, and really Republicans pay, anytime they try to take away parental rights or the innocence of our children. So we've mostly been attacking the transgender industry, what they're doing to our children and women's sports and privacy and security, but also what they're doing to the hearts and minds of our children in our school. And we want to empower every parent in the country. There's all these big special interest groups in DC, Father. As you know, there's big pharma, big oil. APP, we like to consider ourselves to be big family.
That is awesome. Of course, in the tradition of the Catholic Church and the teachings that have been issued over the centuries, really, we've always seen the teaching that the family is the fundamental unit of society. You have a strong family, you have a strong society. It's supposed to be the first church, the first school, the first government. That's the kind of philosophical framework that you're working off of, right?
No, that's exactly right. It's absolutely Catholic social teaching. It's very beautiful. And Father, one thing, I'm the eldest of 10 kids. And one thing that the family helps you develop and learn is tolerance, right? Yes. You have to love and support people that really annoy the heck out of you a lot of times. And it just teaches you that the world's much bigger than just yourself, right? Because the family exists for something much bigger than itself. It exists for God and his glory, but it also exists to serve those that are a part of that family. And I think that's why America is in such a bad strait, is that we've forgotten what family is. And so many of us come from broken families, and we've lost what real community is. But if you screw up the family and you don't have strong families, your communities are only not so far away from collapsing as well.
Many years ago, there was a woman by the name of Dolores Greer, who was the vice chancellor of the New York Archdiocese. And I remember her saying, this must have been in maybe in the mid 90s or something. She said, she was talking about the evangelization of the family. And she said, the problem today is, if you want to evangelize the family, first, we have to find the family. And she was saying something that was true then, it's even more true now. The disappearance of the family, and some of this is engineered, of course, deliberately by the left. And I'd like your comment on this. It's not just, there's a disintegration of the family, as if these things just happen by themselves. There has been a sustained, deliberate attack on the very notion of the family, the value of the family, and the right of the family, as you already have referenced, the rights, interlocking rights within the family to even exist in our culture today.
No, Father, that's exactly right. And, we hear this truism all the time that politics is downstream of culture. And that's a half truth, right? The reality is that politics is part of the culture. It reacts to universities and the academia system. It reacts to the news media. But at the same time, you can use politics to go on offense. And what the left has done is they have used our legal system and our legislative system to pass laws that break down what George Gilder calls the sexual constitution, which is this necessary social constitution between men and women for society to exist. And it's basically that men need women and women need men. And we have different things that make us complement each other. But once you start to break that down, you eventually end up seeing the complete abolition of the family, right? And so I would say that there are attacks against men and masculinity, right? Because really becoming a real man is becoming a father. And that counts for priests too, because you got a lot of people that you're taking care of. But that's the steps of masculinity. But they attack you. They give our young men marijuana. They give them porn. They give them all these pacifiers that distract them from the real mission at hand, which is to start a family, to get married, have a life partner, and to serve your country. But at the same time, we've also passed a lot of laws that encourage that and allow for that. We've legalized pornography nationwide. And for the longest time, we didn't have even age verification online to protect kids. So our kids have been getting swept up in this. But on the other side of the coin is this no-fault divorce situation. I think a lot of young people, 40% of Gen Zers, fathers, say that they'll never get married. 43% say they'll never have children. And it's really sad because I think these kids have come from broken homes and broken families. They've seen their families fall apart. And I think they've been so hurt by it that they don't want to pass on that hurt or risk getting hurt again with their own marriages. So it's really deep. And then on the top of that, we have a whole culture and a whole legal system that tells women that, working for Jeff Bezos at Amazon and sending out press releases with the Amazon letterhead, that's more dignified as they are, than being a mother, right? Being a mother is like so irreplaceable. Like your impact on the culture and society at large is so enormous. And I don't think we do a good job of showing women just how special they are for being able to even be mothers.
As you've mentioned, and friends, for those of you that are just joining us, we're talking with Terry Schilling, longtime friend and ally. He is president of American Principles Project, defending the family, using the tools of politics to do so. And that's what, that is a special characteristic, of course, as you've laid out already of APP, that we look at politics and we say, look, this must be in the service of the family. And then we can look at it the other way. If we love the family, if our religious faith tells us to value the family, we can't ignore politics because that's one of the main ways that we end up defending the family. I think, I love your comment on this, that in the victories we had in November on so many levels in the elections, I think a lot of what happened and a lot of what explains those victories is that so many of the American people who love their families more than they love their political party said, you know what? I'm putting family first with my vote this year because what has been happening with the attacks on the family, the transgender nonsense, and some of the many other things you've already outlined is too much. This election is just between good and evil. It's between common sense and insanity. I've heard so many voters, as I'm sure you did, expressing it in exactly those terms. And that's powerful enough, number one, to get a person off the couch who may not have voted in many years and into that voting booth. And it's also powerful enough for a person to cross over in terms of their political affiliation to vote for the candidate in the party that they believe is going to protect their families. What are your thoughts on that?
No, look, I think that's exactly right. If you look at the 2024 election results versus the 2022 election results, the biggest difference, you in both elections, you had crime, you had illegal immigration, you had Biden inflation and the Biden economy, all these things. Foreign policy was even present with the Afghanistan withdrawal. But what you didn't have was the culture war in 2022, right? And in 2022, we came up a little bit short. We barely kept the House and we barely kept the Senate. But 2024 comes along and we actually gain it and we win back the presidency. And I think there's two things going on, Father. I think that one, Kamala Harris and the entire Democratic Party now, like Governor Newsom and J.B. Pritzker, they're absolutely out to lunch. And it's not just out to lunch, they're out to Mars. I mean, they are pushing such a radical and harmful and evil agenda on the American people. And they're trying to gaslight us into thinking that this agenda isn't evil, that it's actually good. But the American people are seeing it through it. But the only reason they're seeing through it, Father, is because President Trump was willing to run on it. You go back to this 2024 election, the number one most remembered ad that was seen by more people, more times in more states, that was the number one issue for swing voters was the Kamala is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you ad, where it was talking about how Kamala supported taxpayer-funded sex change procedures for federal inmates. Right, this is insane policy. Yeah. Americans are kind of libertarian in a lot of issues. If you want a sex change, fine, but you got to pay for it yourself, and you just can't be a kid. But they're just so crazy not to lunch. And then you obviously have parents seeing what's going on with these drag queen story hours and with the transgender agenda that's being pushed in schools. And they've just had enough. They're just fed up. Leave the kids alone. Leave our families alone, and let's get back to work. And that's what President Trump offered them. And so many Republicans in the past, they failed that test. And so we're so blessed to have President Trump at the helm of our party.
Absolutely, what a blessing he is and continues to be. You may have heard me say over recent years in my own commentaries that we see ourselves at a point where we can't even say a man is a man or a woman is a woman. And maybe that's because for 50 years we've been saying a baby's not a baby. The rebellion against God's truth that makes us think that we can choose, we can decide the value of a baby in the womb. And if we decided the baby doesn't have any value, we have abortion, is the same myth that tells us by our own choice we can transform a man into a woman or vice versa. Tell us about the work that APP does when it comes to this most fundamental issue of protecting innocent life. And particularly, it seems to me, because as you know, we work so much in healing the wounds of abortion, that we see so clearly that there are few, if any, more destructive factors attacking the family than abortion itself. I mean, its after effects are just devastating to any kind of semblance of family.
Well, Father, what I'll tell you is that the number one thing that APP does on the issue of abortion is meet with legislators and politicians to make sure that they know where the American people are at on the abortion issue. There's been so much misconstruation and misinformation out there that a lot of politicians think that running to protect the unborn is a loser of an issue, and it's just not true. The reality is that the Democrats' position on abortion, no restrictions whatsoever, no parental involvement or engagement, funded by tax dollars, at any point in the pregnancy, a baby can be killed. That's an extremely unpopular position. In fact, it's way more unpopular than even banning all abortions outright. So what we do is we sit down with legislators and we'll show them polls in their state, in their district, and we'll show them where their voters are at on the issue. And that helps them be a lot more supportive of passing legislation to protect the unborn and to fight back against Planned Parenthood, right? We have this big, beautiful bill that we just got through the House and we're working to get through the Senate. It defunds Planned Parenthood. Yeah. Right, that was a major initiative that APP was supportive of, and meeting with members of Congress and Senate and House leadership on. We're still doing that now, but we have to defund Planned Parenthood. I think it'll be one of the biggest victories that the pro-life movement has ever had, and it'll really be a death blow to the entire abortion industry. So the other thing that I will say, we focus mostly on the politics and where the American people are, because if the politics aren't there on an issue, you're not going to be able to move it. You got to have the support of the American people, and the politicians have to be willing to see that and take action. So we've been doing that. But also, Father, I don't think any young girl actually gets an abortion if there's a supportive father in the house, right? And that can be for the father of the child that she's pregnant with. If that father is excited and ready to go, ready to be a father, she's not going to get an abortion, right? And in most cases, I think. But also, if there's a loving, supportive father at the head of the household that little girl can go to for support and moral clarity, then I think we're going to have a lot fewer abortions in this country. So by strengthening the family, we're also helping address the abortion epidemic.
Yeah, absolutely. The strength of the family. I worked for a while at the Vatican at the office of the Council for the Family. And we always used to say, no family without life, no life without family. And it's a kind of simple way of saying exactly the point you were just making, that God's plan is for life to flourish in the family. And you start tinkering with that, and you're going to end up with this massacre of children. I wanted to ask you about, of course, we're talking about the value of politics here in defending our key values. And you mentioned, of course, the extraordinary leadership of President Trump. So many of us, so many of our viewers and listeners right now were very highly motivated to vote for President Trump because the agenda he was laying out was their agenda. It's our agenda. And I loved when he said during the election, didn't you, Terry, when he would say, it's not just me running for 47th president. We are running for 47th president of the United States. And we were elected in terms not only of the values and the policy positions we wanted to see advanced, but really in terms of the fact that President Trump has returned so much power and freedom to the people where it belongs under our Constitution. But I wanted to, with that as a framework, look ahead to the 2026 midterms. And in fact, I've been saying to people, it's not even that it's ahead. We have to consider it as here and now. It's just as important to be just as motivated and enthusiastic in voting in these midterms as it was in this last November, isn't it? Because how can that agenda that we chose last November continue to progress if we don't keep and in fact increase the margins we have in Congress, not to mention all the other races that there will be. Certainly President Trump is not on the ballot, but in another sense he is, because the whole agenda and the whole motivation for us putting him back in the White House is on the line when it comes to these midterms. Give us your thoughts about that.
Well, first and foremost, I couldn't agree with you more. These upcoming midterm elections are incredibly important to President Trump being able to get really anything more done in his second term. If we allow the Democrats to take back either chamber of Congress, we won't be able to get anything done. Democrats are already blocking everything with us in the majority in both chambers. And if they win back either chamber of the House or Senate, then what we will have is nonstop impeachment trials and impeachment shams. Like, we'll have the whole thing all over again, a whole redo of the first Trump term. We don't want that. That's a disaster. Democrats are so evil, Father. They should never get power again, or at least until they reconcile for all of the harm that they've done to our country and the legal shambles that they put us in. But look, we've got to turn out at the midterms, and I love the way that you're thinking about it. The midterms are right now. The battle for winning back Congress and expanding our majorities in both the House and the Senate, what that is really being fought right now is it's right now. It's you and I talking. We have to get to our family and friends, make sure that they know, Father, I'm surprised every election, and we do, elections in the spring, the fall, the summer sometimes, and these primary elections. I'm always shocked at how few people know that there's an election coming up.
Right.
And we have to remind ourselves that these are not nerds. These are not political nerds. They have real lives. They have real jobs. They have real families, and they get distracted.
Yeah,
it's your and my job and all of our friends' jobs to make sure that every one of our family members and friends and allies knows when the election is and who to vote for, because these people get tied up. So we just got to do the fundamentals, make sure that people know what's at stake this election and know where to go, how to vote, and when the election times are. And I think we'll be in really good shape. I'm very bullish that I don't think the Democrats are going to pick up either chamber this year. I think that they still are swinging and missing. They're trying to find these big issues, but we've already litigated President Trump as a nation. We reelected him, right? He's back in the White House, and Democrats are still suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, and I don't see the American people changing on that. So I'm very bullish that we'll keep both the House and the Senate and possibly grow our majorities in both chambers.
You know, I'm thinking exactly the same way. And I think one of the dynamics that various political commentators have pointed out is that, you know, when you have what we saw in the fall, such an extreme cluster of positions on the part of the Democrats and a really kind of an awakening among so many voters, as we were saying before, you know, good versus evil, common sense versus insanity. You got a lot of crossover. You got people who, you know, moved from Democrat to independent, at least in their voting, perhaps in their affiliation too, or maybe crossed over to Republicans altogether. And this is what happens when you lose so badly in an election. You're going to have a seepage of voters. So then, what do you have to do? Then you have to appeal more to your base. The Democrat base is more extreme, and so in a sense, you know, they lose like they lost. And then they become more extreme, which, of course, for them, it's like, oh, you know, we got to win our primaries. We got to keep our base encouraged, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, fine. But in the process of so doing, you're alienating yourself from the vast majority of the American voters whose votes you need if you're going to get back in power. And I think because of that dynamic is happening right now. And it's not something to make us complacent. We got to work as if everything depends on this. But I think it's a part of the reality that's going on right now in our politics.
No, I think that's right. And I think also that a lot of the Democrats' trusted institutions like the legacy media, they could always count on them before for, you know, those last minute hit jobs. And even up until the Trump era, they were relying on them way too heavily. The unfortunate thing, and actually the fortunate thing for America, is that Americans have seen through the lies of the legacy media, I think, for the most part. There are still some useful idiots, I think, that believe what they see on CNN as the truth and MSNBC and all the broadcast networks. But I think the vast majority of Americans are seeing through the propaganda that's coming through and being pumped through our legacy media every single day. And they're calling BS now. And so it's great. But we also have to remind ourselves, Father, as you said, like, this is not going to be easy. It's not going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be a slog. And they still have a lot of power, a lot of money, and way too much influence over America. And so we've got to fight every day like it could be our last.
Absolutely. You may know, Terry, we started a C4 pro-life vote. And of course, we've always, as a C3, pushed the limits as far as political activity here at Priests for Life. But now we have a C4 called Pro-Life Vote. And, you know, we look forward to working, as we have in the past, to reinforce everything you're doing and to collaborate as much as possible. Let our audience know how they can reach you and American Principles Project and get involved.
Well, first, Father, thank you so much for having me. I will just tell you that I have always been a huge fan of yours and Priests for Life. I'll never forget picking you up at the Pittsburgh airport and driving you out to Franciscan University to give a talk to a bunch of college kids that Billy Valentine and I had set up. You've always been such an encouragement for all of us, for young people especially, getting back to the basics and the fundamentals of life and when you have human rights, right? And so I followed your work throughout the years. You've been so courageous and you've done so many things to help save the unborn and to help build God's kingdom here on earth. You've suffered the slings and arrows. And so I'm just so grateful for you. So before I told anyone any more about me, I didn't want to leave today without telling you how much I love you and how much I appreciate Priests for Life. It's easily and obviously one of the best organizations in the country. And I'm just so glad that you've kind of taken me under your wing as a mentor, and you give me advice all the time and encouragement every time I see you. So I just want to thank you. But
appreciate that. Thank you.
You can, anyone, if you want to find out what I'm doing or what APP is doing, you can find us online at AmericanPrinciplesProject.org. Or you can follow me on social media at Schilling 1776, SCHILLING 1776 across all the major platforms.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the partnership and friendship. We got a lot to do together for America, for the principles on which she was founded. And I appreciate you and your whole team, Terry. And let's do this again sometime, and we'll keep our audience updated about your activities and about the things we do together. So thanks again. God bless you. And friends, go check out American Principles Project if you aren't connected with them already. And we will continue this marvelous mission together for America and for the God who created us. Terry Schilling, thanks again very much. God bless.